Now we're live. Hi, my name's Lisa. I'm one half of the Cryptid Women's Society in New Zealand, and the other half is Juliet over in Melbourne, Australia. And have we got a cracker of an episode for you? So you should jump on, make sure you're live with us, and keep an eye out because Juliet will be getting her little booty in here very shortly. And today we are talking Navajo lore, Skinwalkers, culture, stories, all of the above. Okay, right. Let's get this woman in here. Oh, hey, everyone. Let's just get this Miss Juliet in here today. We've got Grumpy Cat on. Grumpy Cat, super grumpy today.
Hello.
Hello. Trying not to be super grumpy, but a little bit.
Oh God, yeah, it's been like that. This is the weekend, isn't it?
Yeah.
I still feel like it's so dark in here. I've got the ring light on, but I think it's dying.
Oh, that's all right. I like the fact that you got your calendar on the side there. It looks like you're freaking organized.
I still miss stuff on it. It needs to actually be in front of me because, man, I'm useless. Hi,
Lindsay. Hey, CJ. What's up? We've also got
Hi,
Noah
CJ.
in the house.
You can see that one, yeah.
So nice to see you all here. Sorry, we're a little bit late today because I took my time making my coffee. Sorry, my fault.
I got mine delivered. Look at that. And I didn't pay for it. It just I sounded like crap and somebody was like, oh, bring your coffee. I went, sweet, I'm going through.
Wow. Okay, fine. I just start sounding like rubbish and people bring me coffees. I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah, but awesome. I do have my lemon, ginger and honey drink as well.
Yeah, well, Juliet's dealing with pretty crazy hay fever at the moment, eh? So you sound like
oh my God. Yeah, like honestly, I like I was telling Lisa, I'm like a 16-year-old boy. One minute I'm talking normal, next minute my voice cracks. It's not good. So bad. So and all of a sudden nothing comes out and I'm like, okay, that's good.
Right. Are we apologizing in advance or?
I am apologizing in advance, yes. So here's why I have my my brew. Which has a little bit of everything in it. So or if I just suddenly flop away out of screen, I'm having a coughing fit, I'll try and mute it beforehand. But it's just more annoying. It's just it's what I get when hay fever hits and I can feel my eyes are like really puffy.
It gets really windy in Melbourne, right?
Yeah, like we have asthma storms, and it basically when we have big asthma storms, it kills people every time. Like we had 11 people die. The last big one we had was last year, and 11 people died. They will literally tell you to stay indoors because there's just so much crap and the wind picks up. Because it's not a lot of wind in Melbourne. There has been recently, but what happens is that everything settles. You got the sun, so pollen settles, this settles, dust settles from. There's just building that the whole of Victoria is just nothing but a building like mecca at the moment. There's buildings, houses, we've got houses going up in 9 weeks, which is just ridiculous.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah. And now the things coming out because all the foundations are moving and we who, normal people who go, okay, let's set the foundations and leave them for a while. And, years ago, and I remember, you got to set that foundation and wait for the ground to move and settle, and then you kind of even it up. But no, houses are going up in 9 weeks, and now they're all getting condemned because basically houses are splitting apart. So, yeah, good old Melbourne building. It's probably going to get me banned.
I mean, that will definitely get us banned, you bitch. That'll get us banned also. But I guess that's all of that concrete and all the construction stuff is blowing everything around as well, right? So
yeah. So that's what I mean. It's basically building, and you've got all the chemicals that they're using, and and so like overseas here, you never heard of asthma storms. It wasn't until we came to Melbourne that you actually hear of asthma storms, and it's insane. And you do, like, even I get wheezy. I never had hay fever. I grew up on a farm. I did hay, we did hay, we did everything. But as soon as like it starts up here, I get wheezy, and I've never ever had that in New Zealand ever in my entire life. So yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm good. It's just annoying, but yeah, it's like you can. It's just,
Anyway, enough about our problems. What about yours?
I should have just put some like cucumbers in my eyes or something. That would have been really good. I just gave
Hey,
up. I'm just like,
everyone.
oh, feck it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, so for everyone that's just joined us, welcome to the show. But the other thing I wanted to let y'all know is we are heading to YouTube in the next couple of weeks. So if you haven't been over to YouTube yet to Cryptid Women's Society, please jump over there, subscribe, follow us, because we will be doing our weekly topics, same time, same bat channel, but just over on YouTube. So get your booties over there. Oh, I just threw my pen away. Um,
Wow.
Redemption Soldier 2.0. Thank you. Can I also, before I read your comments, so I'm a personal trainer by trade, right? So I write programs for people all the time. And I get to the point where I'm like, fuck, what am I going to name your program, right? Your next workout. So what I've basically started doing is being like, lower body 2.0, lower body 2.1. So I just wanted to, that just made me giggle because I was like, I ain't got no idea what I'm calling that one. Couple of lovely Aussie birds talking cryptids. I'm in the right place. Oh!
But we'll just say I'm in Melbourne, but I'm a Kiwi.
I'm in New Zealand and I'm definitely a Kiwi.
It's a little bit like calling an American a Canadian and vice versa, but no, I'll let it slide. No, it's fine.
Now, look, to be honest, we're so
Fun.
close in proximity, New Zealand to Australia. We're only about a 4-hour flight away for me to get over to Jules. And most New Zealanders will have like a situation where in some time in their life they'll float over to Australia and then come back to NZ, and we have reciprocal agreements and that sort of stuff. And it's choice, man. Like, I love going to Australia. It's such a beautiful, beautiful
Yeah.
place. And I've lived there as well. And we laugh about all the things that want to kill you over there, and not the humans, like the animals and the cryptids.
Not the crackheads.
Not the crackheads, but just the cryptids and the creatures. But it's a beautiful, beautiful place. Like,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
stunning place.
Oh, you've been banned too. Oh, join the club. We've had a few. We've learned that you can't say certain words with Australia in the same sentence.
Okay, yeah, no, it was me that got us banned, so
It
we're
was.
out of
Yeah.
jail. We're out of
Yeah.
jail.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Uh,
hey, Jules, what are we talking about today? I am
oh
freaking
my
excited
gosh.
because I love this, man.
Yeah. So excited. We are carrying on from Skinwalker Ranch from last week, and we are
Mm.
going into the Navajo Skinwalkers, and not just the Navajo, but other First Nations, kind of like Skinwalkers, shape shifting, that kind of stuff. Super excited and being super respectful. We understand that it's a bit of a taboo subject. They don't like talking about them because they feel that it will bring the skinwalkers to them, and that kind of and bad kind of juju basically. I have gone through Native American information, so I didn't want it to come from just a random person. So, and there's a little bit of kind of difference between different, so like Navajo people, they have, it's like all tribes, they have their opinion, so I've just kind of been respectfully kind of put them both together, and so this is kind of what I have learned. So if anything is wrong or you disagree, that's fine. But yeah, we come at this with the most respect, and it's just trying to get an understanding for ourselves,
Yeah.
and for everyone out there, and you make up your own mind basically.
And I
But
guess
yeah,
remembering,
it's
like we're
amazing.
Kiwis, right? We come from the bottom of the world. We come from real indigenous, understanding as well, though.
Yeah,
In New Zealand, we have Māori people, the Māori culture. We learn Te Reo, which is the language. We learn all about the legends and the culture that sits behind that. Now, Juliet is kind of delving deeper into the Aboriginal lore and their culture as
yeah,
well, being in Australia. And so we are kind of, coming from a total outside perspective,
yeah,
talking about the Navajo culture and their tribes and their
yeah.
people and their understanding and their lore of their culture and the land. And so if anyone's got any comments or you think we've gone wrong anywhere or you want to add anything, please drop it into the comments.
Yeah,
We will go
absolutely.
through all of these as well. And
Yeah,
I've got
yeah,
a
yeah.
couple of cool cryptids that I found for
Ooh.
from the Navajo culture. So I'm
Oh
pretty
yeah,
excited
that's
about that.
so cool. It's just like, yeah, it's so amazing. It's been very kind of enlightening for me to kind of find half of this stuff and and learn about this stuff. For me, one of the biggest things I do miss in Australia about New Zealand is the Maori culture. It is just such a part of everyday life over there, and the Aboriginal side over here isn't. It's like there really needs to be a lot of work done there to really embrace it, because the Aboriginal folklore and lore and just them, just it's beautiful. They're beautiful people, and yeah, so it's really interesting. But
Hey, Jules, before we start, can we just read through
yeah,
these comments? Because
yeah, yeah, go for it.
these are choice. So, welcome everyone. Lindsay says Skinwalkers are my fave.
Yeah,
I don't like me too.
freakies.
Um, Redemption Soldier 2.0 says I'm only a couple of hours away from Skinwalker Ranch. I need to go there and check out the area. I'm also part
Yeah.
Obwe. I don't know how to say that, so my apologies. I don't know what sort of
How's it spelled? How is
let
it spelled?
OJIBWE.
Oh, okay, cool.
Some
Okay,
sort
good.
of native. So
Yeah.
I love native lore. I'm not quite. You have to speak Kiwi to us. You're using your terminology. I don't understand you. Like we are really far out of our depth as far as like the language goes and that sort of stuff. We don't know how to say that at all.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of things that I'm like, I'll just go around that today and not butcher it too bad.
It's Chippewa. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I've seen this Chippewa. So, oh my God, listen, mate. If you want to come and have a chat to us, we would love to talk to you. That would be absolutely amazing, and just talking
Also,
about the folklore around your stuff as well.
he's
So,
being banned. Okay, this has got off
hey,
Instagram.
you can come into our R18 into the dungeon with us.
He's being
It's
banned.
me.
Okay. 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 Also, there's a question here for you, Juliet, which you can probably
Yeah.
answer, and this might start you off pretty well. Lindsay asks, does each culture have a skinwalker shapeshifter legend? Sort of like
Yes.
people all over the world have different versions of Bigfoot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I am going into other tribal shapeshifters with just a few of the bands. So yeah, so I will go into that.
Oh,
So
given also just before you start, Jules. So just
yeah.
to answer Lindsay once more,
Oh yeah.
we don't have the type of person, the witch doctor, skinwalker, shapeshifter down in
Mm,
New Zealand. In Māori culture, we don't have that. However, in Papua New Guinea, they do.
yeah,
They have witch
yeah,
doctors, 100%. We have like we've talked about numerous times, we have our friend Rex up there, who's one of our contacts. He's actually a cryptozoologist up there. He's fantastic. And he said that his uncle is, in fact, a shapeshifter. Witch doctor. They have different names for
yeah,
them, obviously. And he saw him shapeshift into a bird. So that's
yeah,
yeah, there's some fascinating stories. Australian Aboriginals don't do shape-shifting witch doctor humans into animals,
yeah, yeah.
but there's always stories that kind of contradict that. So, we kind of just go with what we know, if
Yeah,
that
and
makes
what we
sense.
find, and that stuff kind of changes, like, we will always say, like, if we find some bit of information and then, later on down the track, it's something either contradicts it or we learn more about that kind of subject, we will always say, and that's a big part of it. We're
Yeah.
learning about these. And that's
Oh,
the great
bless you.
thing. You'll never run out of stuff to learn, and
Yeah.
that's the exciting stuff about it. So
Right out.
cool. So, one thing I do want to do is there is look up if you want to learn some really kind of awesome stuff about skinwalkers and Navajo folklore and stories and stuff. On YouTube, there is a guy called Shanclen. So Shanclen. He does Shadow Productions. I will put a link down in the DMs and stuff later on. He is a Navajo person. He talks about, all the Navajo lore, skinwalkers, and his own personal experiences with skinwalkers.
Ooh.
And like, there are a few stories on there that I wanted to share, but I just felt it wasn't my place to share them.
Yep.
It didn't feel right. So, we are, well, I'm in the process of, I want to make contact with him and see if we can get him on and do an interview with him, because he's just got this aura about him, and he's just amazing. It's all like really dark and creepy, and he's amazing. So
Hey,
hats
Jules,
off to
when
him.
you
But
get
yeah.
Jules, when you get a chance through this conversation, are you able to just drop his name in the comments?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
just
will.
when you get a chance, when there's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a
I'll
spot.
put it in before we finish when
Yeah.
Lisa's chatting. Just remind me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's really cool. I mean, there are plenty of natives out there that are doing all these stories, but
Sure.
he just really resonated with me. Just like you just kind of connect with certain people,
Mm.
and yeah. So
Cool.
anyway, so like we said, today we're talking about skinwalkers and shape shifting. Mainly with like the Navajo culture. We'll go into the skinwalkers, but understanding like shape shifting in native cultures. So um, shapeshifting is found like worldwide, basically, like we know in the islands and stuff, like South America are really big on it and stuff like that. But we're going to kind of look more into the Native American traditions. So some tribes such as the Navajo, the Zuni, if I say these wrong, I apologize, Shoshone. So it isn't a myth thing. It's like it's intertwined with all the rituals and the practices and dances and all the ceremonies. So it can be for a range of different reasons, from hunting, and to war, all these kinds of stuff. So the whole practice of shape shifting. So we're not talking about skinwalkers. We're just talking about shape shifting right now. So it's encouraging the what they say, the shedding of the ego. So you're promoting a fluid kind of shapeless state of being. So it's not limited to select individuals. Anybody, men, women, can can do shape shifting. And unlike a spirit animal, which kind of guides, we all talk about spirit animals and they guide you on your journey. Shape shifting is a transformative experience. So you're mentally shifting from a human to that animal form. Um, so it often occurs during the cultural practices, and like I was saying, in songs, dances for war ceremonies, and hunting rituals. And yeah, but dance is kind of like the most common form for doing within that shape shifting if you're doing it. So part of the ceremony is dance. And and we all know, like with the Native Americans over there, like there's a lot of dance and ceremonial stuff, a bit like like the Maori. There's a lot of what we call the kapahaka and all the dance. And
Oh, yeah.
you've got the haka, you've got so many different dances that that we learnt at school, with the men and the women. So it's a
Well,
really integral part, isn't it?
dancing is such an important part of ancient cultures. I mean, you look at the
Yeah,
Aborigines, they use the didgeridoo for
yeah,
music, and then drums and all the other sort of things that they have, and then they dance, and they'll do fire dances, and they'll do rain
yeah.
dances, quite similar to the Native Americans as well. So it's across the board, and I didn't realize shape shifting was a part of that, but it kind of takes me into
Mm,
that. What are the connections between the monks or the older ancient Indian civilizations that were part of the Vedic manuscripts, where they have cities, which are these superpowers that they can gain after dance, rituals, music,
yeah,
and one of those cities allows the monks or the ancient people, the practitioners, to change the shape of their body, be it big, large, small, um, translucent. They can go through walls, but can they also then change into animals as well? So that's
Yeah. I mean,
interesting.
that's it. These records are, and drumming is it's so primal, isn't it? It's just,
Sure.
every culture, there's like that drumming. The didgeridoo gives that same thing. If you haven't listened to a didgeridoo, like honestly, like look it up and you listen to it, and it resonates right through you, like a drum does. So it's amazing. Yeah, there's some pretty powerful
Yeah.
musical stuff, and that's it. Music is life, isn't it? Whether we're in modern day or ancient times, or it's music is such a kind of a life-bringing thing. It gives you so much pleasure. You can, yeah, we just love it. Yeah,
So
I'm going
what's
back
it?
into my 80s at the moment. I'm just listening to the 70s and 80s. I don't know what it is like in this last couple of weeks. Like, yeah.
Yeah, you're a little rock chick. That's what you are. But
Yeah.
also on that
Yeah.
music sound, I mean, you're talking about vibrating your cells at a different frequency,
Yeah.
right? And we talk about this quite often, especially like off camera. We have these amazing conversations that we're like, "Oh, frequency, da da da." But that is such a well-known part of ancient civilizations. And when Juliet went to Egypt, and
Yeah.
went and visited the giant pyramids of Giza and this sort of stuff, the questions were, are these chambers healing chambers that have certain frequencies to them,
Yeah.
or whatever? And there's been so many um, uh, pieces of research done and experiments and that sort of stuff on frequency, and that, like you say, the didgeridoo is so low. It's such a low
Yeah.
booming kind of frequency. It really kind of gets down into your root chakra where you're just like,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's really,
yeah.
it's an amazing,
Yeah,
amazing thing. If you've ever
yeah,
been a part of that, like face to face, it's a really phenomenal
yeah.
experience. And it's like watching a haka, right? Being
I
in
was about
front.
to say that. Watch a
Yeah,
haka it brings tears to your eyes. Like it's so emotional. It is
yeah.
such an emotional thing. It is, you either kind of get that emotion of, oh, of tears, but it's just tears of, you can't even explain it, or it just fires you up. It's like one or the other. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty,
And so is
it's pretty
that
cool.
enough? Like, is that sort of frequency enough to kind of, like fire up your cells to then transform your body into a different type of
Yeah.
being? Like, oh, I haven't really kind of delved into that. I think that's probably my next rabbit hole to go down. Thank you, Juliet. Like I need another one.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It'll be so many, so many. Okay, so we talk about now the Navajo Skinwalker. Now, if I say this wrong, I have watched this guy say this word so many times. So it is called the Yana Gloshi. So I think I'm kind of close. But it's not spelt like that at all. So it is a very big. But if you have a look at the socials that are coming up, it'll have everything on there, and a lot of like the little stories that I've got. I kind of went right into. I did a lot of kind of skinwalker and shapeshifter stuff for the socials because I just enjoyed it so much. So in Navajo culture, this translates to by means of it, it goes on all fours. So this term kind of refers to a type of witch or practitioner of like harmful dark magic. And they have the ability to transform or possess or disguise themselves as an animal.
Mm.
So unlike traditional kind of healers who are, they've got gifts that are good for the community and stuff like that, skinwalkers gain their abilities by basically committing a grave taboo. And one of them is basically sacrificing or unaliving, because we can't say the other word on social media, a family member or somebody who is absolutely really loved or dear to them. So that's what they need to do to attain the power of being a skinwalker. So it's pretty dark stuff. So now this is where it kind of like a little bit. So some Navajos say that when they do this, the transformation, it is all by themselves. So they'll basically commit this crime and then they'll go in and they do what they need to do to transform into a skinwalker. But I was looking at an interview with a couple of Navajo rangers, and they have actually worked in and around Skinwalker Ranch. And they say that sometimes that they are helped and encouraged by others to do this, and so they are kind of taught to change into a skinwalker.
Mm.
So yeah, so there's kind of a little bit of contradicting things there. So maybe it's different for each person that changes. So I'll just kind of leave that there.
It's interesting.
Um, yeah. So they can change into any animal that they have the skin of. Okay,
Oh,
so this
okay.
is kind of like so you've got coyotes, you've got wolves, owls, foxes, and in those forms they are said to kind of like stalk and harm and manipulate others. So that's the whole point. So yeah, so any skin of an animal that they have, they can change into. So I was trying to find out if they could change into multiple different ones, but I couldn't find that. So if anybody kind of knows anything about that, so I was like, if you had a wolf skin or a owl skin or something,
Then
you
they
know,
could change into.
can they change or is it that set one? So I'm not sure on, and I just couldn't find an answer for that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so originating in traditional folklore. So this comes from the Navajo. Even today, skinwalkers are a really real and present in society today,
True.
and they are regarded with fear and caution. So like we're saying before, many Navajo people will avoid speaking about them, especially to outsiders, because they just don't want to risk that attention of that negative entity or any harm coming to their body, to them, or their family. It also kind of serves as a protective measure, preserving the sanctity of their traditions and shielding the community from potential harm. It's also a reflection of deep respect and caution, with which the Navajo kind of approach the spiritual aspects, of their culture. So it's like a secretive thing. So it's
Yeah.
kept there, and it's been very manipulated by Hollywood as to what again what these things are, what they look like, what they do. And I'll go into that more with like the Wendigo, because it's a lot more prevalent with the Wendigo and kind of the changes, which I'll be doing in a couple of weeks, and how Hollywood has kind of really twisted it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So and it's not done
But
on a
this is the thing.
respectful.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, it's certainly not done respectfully as far as like we would consider it anyway. But I mean, this is what we were
yeah,
talking about last week as far as like the media and the popularity around Skinwalker Ranch, right? And how were these entities and this activity always there at a certain amount and a certain level, and then with all of this kind of popularization through the media and all that sort of stuff now starting to manifest it more and more and
yeah,
more, and now the activity is really starting to drum up. So is this the same? I understand like the Navajo people kind of going, okay, we don't talk about it because if you talk about it, it gives it energy and that's what it feeds on. And we know that dark entities feed on fear and attention, right? They love
yeah.
attention. They're
Love
like,
the attention.
if you're talking about me all the time, you're obviously inviting me into your house. That's
Yeah.
basically what it is, right? And any sort of religion and any sort of culture, everything is the same as far as that goes. And so then is the media starting to help manifest these kind of
Has it made it
activity?
grow? Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Especially the paranormal activity that's within Skinwalker Ranch, isn't it? And
Oh,
and that's the thing that we kind of know a little bit more about, is that that paranormal activity will feed off of your emotions, will feed off of, like you're saying,
sure.
the attention and that kind of stuff. So it's like, and we know the military's been in there, the government is, these people have gone in there, these billionaires have
Yeah.
gone in there, they've taken in all types of equipment to try and access portals and whatever else that they're doing there, so it's you're angering basically, and you're
Yeah.
angering the spirits around there. And the other thing that I learned around that area is that there's what they call like the grumbling mountains. Like these mountains are grumbling and these noises are coming through these mountains, but they're not attached to any like earthquakes or tremors or anything like that. It's just the sound and this grumbling that's coming within these mountains. And it's really, really interesting because, because they're saying that these mountains won't stop grumbling, basically, you know, saying I'm not happy until basically the rights have been wrong, the wrongs have been right, sorry, the other way around.
Yeah.
I watched a doco where they were literally kind of doing testing on the ground, going, well, where's this noise coming from? And they've got no idea. But it's nothing to do with seismic activity at all. But there's movement and there's noise, and so it's
Well,
like what's going
that's
on, and
crazy.
that's kind of outside Skinwalker Ranch. That whole
Yeah.
area.
The
It's
Winter
not
Basin,
just
right? Yeah.
the Union Basin. Yeah, it's just so
I
it's
mean, and
it's
we talked
really
about that last week in the displacement of the Navajo people and kind of what they've been through. And like we talked about last week, we're not going to go into it this week because that deserves an episode on its own. But
yeah
there is, like that was, atrocities that just continue to happen, and it's all by way of, or by want of money, and the elements that the ground holds, the minerals and the
yeah
everything else that the ground has and the energy that it has, and it's all about money. And we see that in New Zealand, we see that in Australia, the
yeah
native people
everywhere.
being pushed along for infrastructure and forward movement,
Yeah.
yeah, and all of the above.
And they do it here. They decided to put in a new motorway, and basically they're like, oh, this is where we're doing it, and people are like, yeah, but we're living here. And they either were told, here's the money for it, you either take it or you'll be evicted, and that's literally what they did here.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. So
Yeah. And so
yeah
then you kind of go, well, if your natural land is here and this is where your ancestors were and this is the energy that you've put into this land and everything else, and then you're displaced from that, well, yeah, you are going to curse the land,
and
100%.
thousands of you were murdered on it, just yeah
Yeah, and all
yeah
of the above. And then there's this whole wonder of, oh, why is it so negative, why is it so angry? And there's the same conversation we have about Australia quite often. Why is
Australia.
it so angry? Well, because of the atrocities that happened when they were colonialized. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and and
Yeah.
to this day, they're still finding mass graves, and it's
And it's
So
something that
anyway,
you've got to talk about, though. It's something that you've got
yeah,
to like, and we're really staunch on that. There's no point in going over the top of it and talking about Skinwalkers and Skinwalker Ranch and these other pieces of folklore without talking about the fact that the Navajo people were totally destroyed,
yeah,
essentially,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
and
yeah,
displaced, and they still are. And I know very little about it other than kind of what I've kind of done the little amount of research into. Um, and it's part and parcel of where these negative entities come from, and
yeah,
the folklore and the cryptids and the everything else comes from,
yeah,
and you
and
have to
what's
talk
going
about
on?
it, have to talk about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and that's it. Talking about it will help. It's it'll help with some healing, but it's hopefully it gets that movement going. So rights are wrongs are righted, as they say. So
100%.
anyway, so we go back into kind of like some of the characteristics of a skinwalker. So there are other ones, but there's like little different physical traits. So like we're saying, they are able to transform into like the various animals. So kind of like coyotes, wolves, foxes, owls, and bears. There's some really interesting owl ones that I want to talk about. Creepy. They can transform between human and animal, or they can be a hybrid of both.
Mm.
So it's not like a complete transformation. They can be. So this is where, like we've seen some of these really odd photos of like these like weird looking wolves walking onto feet, or other animals that are, that are just not quite
They
right.
kind of
And
look human like almost.
Yeah, nothing quite right. Eyes that glow unnaturally, often red and yellow, which we hear a lot, with Bigfoot and all of those. They can move with unusual speed. So, like, apparently that's one of the big things. Like, they've just got the speed,
Mm.
agility, and they're like very, very silent steps and stuff. Even though, they could be running across rocks or something, you won't hear anything. Um, so when they're back in human form, they're sometimes described as having distorted or unsettling facial features. So even when they change back, they're not quite right. You just, yeah, it's there's something off. And we all know that. We've all kind of met people and kind of gone, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, you're wrong.
Are you suggesting that they might be skinwalkers?
I'm not saying that they're shapeshifters, but they could be reptilians. No, I just
You're
put
a
it out there
bit
anyway.
off.
So they can appear larger or smaller than typical animals and humans. They may have patches of fur or hair on them that's inconsistent. So, with normal animals and humans, they can emit unusual sounds, eerie howls, growls, or human-like laughter, which is a really common one.
Mm.
There's also accounts of like a really unpleasant odor again, which is very similar to like the Bigfoot kind of primate stuff. um so eyes that don't blink or move really unnaturally, so apparently they can just stay staring, they don't blink. Yeah, so yeah, you'd be like, oh, please blink. Yeah. um Yeah, so multiple limbs, yeah, or deformed limbs. So, we all know, like when we've seen kind of, pictures and stuff, they're all kind of just like really odd, deformed, kind of looking limbs, extra long limbs, that kind of like the power crawlers. I don't know whether they're the same, whether they would be the same kind of looking kind of thing. And generally, when you're having an encounter with them, it's a sense of dread. Now, isn't that funny? That's the word that came up where we had an encounter, or unease. And witnesses kind of report feeling that they've been followed or they're being watched all the time. So,
Yes.
yeah, which was really funny because that word dread came up quite a lot when I was looking into like encounters and stuff. And Lisa and I had an encounter with a person, and that was the big thing that came up for me was dread. It was not a good encounter. We can't go into that right now, but maybe later on we will. But yeah, that
Yeah.
was a very
Feels odd, eh?
interesting.
And that was through video as well. And that was the
That was through video.
first time through video that Juliet's ever experienced something like that versus being face to face, right? We kind of
Yeah,
went, oh no, it has to be a face to face energy transfer, but that definitely kind
yeah,
of threw us for a six.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and yeah, dread was the word that Juliet used afterwards, just going, that's not
Yeah,
okay.
it's not normal. And thanks to Joe from Ancient Enigma Files. Like, Joe, we need to speak to you.
Yeah, debrief. We need a debrief.
Debriefing time.
Yeah, and one day maybe we'll talk about that. But
Yeah,
yeah, it was I think like that dreads, like you get that with
yeah,
negative entities, right? With
yeah,
shadow people, Hatman, even Goatman stories, that sort of stuff. There's that
yeah,
feeling of just dread, something really bad is
yeah.
going on. So that's really, really interesting. I wonder if they're all channeling into the same kind of energy pathway.
Yeah. So it's like one of the other things that if you go on to what's his name, the Shanshlin, yeah, so his story, so he talks about one of the encounters that he had like bone kind of dust blown into his face, which affected him. So apparently that's something that they carry, which I didn't really go into that side of stuff, but I just found
Yeah.
that kind of really interesting. And generally the bones are of children or twins, apparently. So they grind, these witch doctors and these skinwalkers grind these bones down
Things.
and blow them into their face, and can gain control, and kind of paralyzes them. And
Mm.
oh, just man, that was
So
like, oh, yeah,
it's
just some
scary.
creepy.
But
Yeah,
also
yeah,
the mention of twins. So I have a mention of twins as well. So
Yeah.
let's put a pin in that. Let's come back to
Yeah.
twins because apparently twins are quite important as far as Navajo culture goes and
Yeah.
folklore
Yeah. Yeah.
or the lore
So,
there. So,
so like going into like the modern kind of like misrepresentation. So we already kind of talked about. So so it's they've gained kind of attention in like popular media, and they've been in like a lot of horror movies and television shows and that kind of stuff. But again, just kind of hitting on it is that they don't show and they don't tell the true story of what the skinwalkers are and the Navajo lore and stuff behind it. So just kind of be aware of that. It's just, yeah, if the skinwalker stuff is kind of what you're interested in, go down the proper channels to find that
yeah,
information. But
very
I know
Hollywoody.
everyone's kind of into like the horror movies and having a good scare, but I'm like a dog man. I'm a werewolf. But I watch some of these movies. I'm like, "Oh, that wouldn't happen." But
But I mean, like there are scary parts of the actual real historical accounts and stuff like that as they stand. My God, like as I
yeah,
started reading through, I was like, oh, that is not okay. Like
yeah,
I listened to one story via a podcast, and it was over a 5 or 6 year period in Arizona,
yeah,
and it was horrendous. Like, and it had major effects on the three kids that were growing up through that time, going through their teenage years and that sort of stuff, and their poor parents going through that and doing
yeah,
all sorts of rituals and prayers and all that sort of stuff, like Navajo prayers and bits and pieces, and the things that they would do to try and protect their family from this entity that was terrorizing their community. And people moved away, like community people moved away,
yeah,
and essentially they ended up having this big giant kind of get together with other spiritual leaders that all came together in this area far away. But the mother and father were like, okay, we'll be a part of this because there's something going on here that needs to be corrected. And
mm.
once they had that kind of spiritual meeting and that get together, it basically chilled right out. So they were pretty sure that that had a good effect on it. But man, they were
Do
talking
they do
about
they not? I mean, this is something that Lisa and I have discussed, and we talked about curses. And that's something that we need to really kind of hit on.
yeah,
Because we always just kind of bring it into stuff and how curses can be hereditary. So you can have your great great
definitely.
grandmother was cursed, and that continues down. So so it's kind of interesting. It's like, did this family, even though maybe they didn't do anything themselves, is it a hereditary kind of curse or a skinwalker, something that's kind
Yeah.
of come down? So,
Yeah, well, I mean, like
yeah,
they were displaced from the land that they lived on. They
mm,
moved somewhere else into this other space in Arizona, and but it was terrorizing the entire community. It was terrorizing the
yeah,
entire community, not just them. And it was pretty horrendous as far as like they had huge claw marks on their door the next morning, and
oh God,
like
yeah.
it was gnarly. It was really full on. But going back to our generational curse, do you know we have a curse on our family apparently?
That
Did you
explains a
know
lot.
that?
I'm pretty sure
Indeed.
we do too.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you our generational curse, okay? Apparently. So, but there's like validity in it, right? So
Yeah.
my half of my family, my dad's side of the family is from Belarus, Poland. And then they basically got shoved out or they ran away once the Nazis were kind of going through their thing, and dispersed around the Americas and to New Zealand and stuff. And then my mum's side of the family are English South African, right? So they grew up in both parts, originated from England and Ireland and around that sort of area, and then moved down to South Africa. So apparently, one of our kind of 3 or 4 generations back, white South Africans that got there or that arrived in South Africa got together with an African woman. I think it was a man, got together with an African woman. They had some children, not in my lineage, but somewhere else. And
And you would have had some
apparently,
color then. You would have got
you
some
would
tan
think I
on you.
could get a tan, but it's not happening.
It's
Still
pale
can't get a
faces.
tan. Honestly, yeah. But apparently, Um, apparently something happened between him and her, and there was probably some adultery going on, I imagine, and her family cursed his bloodline. And so,
Oh,
yeah, so this is what I was told years and years ago, and I just remembered it and went, oh, yeah, that's right. And so, and you forget your curses, generational curses, whatever. But apparently the curse was that the first male born to every generation would have major like learning issues, behavioral issues. There'd be something wrong, like a
something
genetic
wrong.
kind of
Yeah.
issue going on. And what do we have every generation, right? Every
Yeah.
generation, there is a boy, and it's usually one of the top, like one of the oldest boys, one of the
Firstborns,
firstborn,
yeah.
has some major, major issues. My brother was one of the firstborn in the family, and he, in that generation, he has major, major issues going on. Dyslexia, ADHD, Asperger's syndrome, all sorts of bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely
Yeah.
man. Love him to pieces. Want to kill him most days, but I
Yeah,
won't.
Marty. We love you, Marty.
Marty Moo. Um, but really, really lovely man, super genius,
Yeah.
can build a computer.
Yeah. My God, he's
You
so
know,
intelligent. Yeah.
did some hacking when he was 10 years old so that we could all have some money.
You
Because
know, you were going to get us banned. Just stop it.
but yeah, really interesting, eh? So when I had
Mm,
my son, I was incredibly worried that he would have learning difficulties like the generation previous and the generation previous and the generation, and you can follow it all the way back and through.
yeah.
So yeah, real crazy. So I just thought I'd mention that generational curses, and it could be very, very similar to the Navajo people, and obviously like these
Yeah.
run all the way through. So are they being attacked
That's
by
really
skinwalkers that
interesting.
are
Yeah.
cursed? I mean, and that was from
Yeah.
Africa, so yeah, crazy, eh?
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's yeah, it is. Yeah, the let's do a piece on that because the generational curses are interesting. So, okay, so other tribal shapeshifters, man, there are some nasty little ones out there. So like many other tribes have similar beliefs. So they're not called skinwalkers; they are generally shapeshifters. For example, the Cherokee, as we know, will have stories of tricksters that can transform into animals. And other tribes have legends of kind of beings that can change and
mm,
manipulate stuff, and cause a bit of mischief. Maybe a bit like a little naughty fairy for us Europeans here. So one of the creepiest ones, and I have done a social media thing on this, and she's creepy. It's called Spearfinger. So she is a Cherokee legend of a shape-shifting, stone-skinned witch with a long knife in place of one of her fingers.
that
Um,
is
so she
terrifying.
she is like terrifying. So I got a great picture like on the socials. So she's often described as like an old woman, and she would convince Cherokee children that she was their grandmother. So she would sit with them, gets creepier. She would brush their hair until they fell asleep, and then she'd kill them with her spear finger. I just like. So apparently she had a love of human livers, which she would extract from the bodies of those that she killed. But it was also said that she left no visible scars on her victims. But she also carried her own heart in her hand. So that was to protect it. So it was like her one of her weaknesses. So the legend goes if she was captured and defeated with the so she was captured and defeated with the help of several birds that carried the information to defeat her. Though she's been destroyed, sometimes it is said that you can hear her cackles through the mountains. So yeah, that was a creepy one, eh?
Oh God, Daggerfinger. What's her name?
Yeah. She is just called, they call her Spearfinger. So
Spearfinger.
I didn't find a Cherokee name, but I mean that is basically her. So she's just creepy. Um,
That's cool.
yeah, I know. So in Mesoamerican cultures, a Nagual, 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 is referring to a personal guardian spirit believed to reside in animals. It's often kind of associated around their birthday, kind of like the calendar, so that they can provide protection and guidance. And basically, individuals that connect with them can shapeshift into their spirit animal or their protector.
Mm.
So so that was kind of like Central America and Mexico, kind of folk religion that's kind of come down from that way. And certain parts, so this is where I found it really interesting, certain parts of the belief is that they can have a positive and a negative associated traits through the year, going basically by by the star signs and that kind of stuff. So, which I found really interesting. So it
Oh.
kind of fits in with our the calendars of where we have all the animals, and that kind of stuff.
Sure, the
So
astrology, sort of, well, the
yeah, and
signs.
the moons, when the moons are this way and that way, all that kind of stuff. So they're generally because it's kind of like Central America, Mexico, and kind of like South America, that kind of stuff. They're generally typically represented by animals like wolves, jaguars, foxes, rabbits, deers, coyotes, and birds. So there's a lot of the stuff that I found with the Nagawa were like a lot of jaguar stuff. So I found that really, really interesting. Because they're really big and they're seen as big protective spirits, kind of like, the further south you go. But yeah, so they're seen as a protector and a guarding, they guard against evil and that kind of stuff. So they're kind of a nice one.
I guess you always have your
Um,
goods and your bads, right? And every
yeah,
culture,
yeah,
you have
yeah,
your guardians, your benevolent, malevolent creatures or
yeah,
entities, to
yeah,
balance it,
yeah.
right? It's all about energy
It's all
balance,
about
isn't it?
balance. So you got to have good and you got to have bad. So we know about the pukwajis.
Oh,
So
Cryptids.
they're like little kind of little fat little creatures. So they're said to be really good-hearted if treated kindly. If not, if they're slighted, they'll basically use their powers to kill you. So don't piss them off. Basically, that's the So that's kind of the Pukwudgie. We've got the Wendigo, which we're going to go into, like I said, in a couple of weeks, and
It's actually not a couple of weeks, it's next week.
it's next week. No,
It
you're
seems,
next week.
can we just note that she's got a calendar behind her and she's obviously not using it?
No,
It's
you're
next
next
week.
week. You're next week.
Yeah, and I'm doing the Wendigo.
Oh, okay, all right, that's cool. Oh my god, it's so much. See, so much all the pressure on me. No, it's okay. So no.
Can we just see what I have to work with right now? Okay,
I'm
seriously.
doing it. No, it's fine.
She is.
No,
She's
it's so
doing
fine.
all the work. It's a true
Oh no, that's right.
story.
I'm doing vampires. I'm doing modern vampires.
Oh,
That's
yes,
right.
yes, yes.
Yeah, talking about bloodsuckers. Anyway, so you're the Wendigo, which Lisa is going into next week, is like a cannibalistic monster spirit, and it's really interesting, kind of like the story and stuff behind them, and literally how Hollywood has changed that like big time.
For real.
Like the traditional Wendigo does not have antlers. That's in the Native American law. It does not have antlers. That is a Hollywood made thing.
Yeah.
So they so they're more like your pal crawlers, basically. When people see pal
Mm.
crawlers and that kind of stuff. So
I always find it so
yeah,
interesting, the connections, like, when you hear stories, right? Like, we in this industry, we get told stories all the time by different people, and then
yeah,
you see stuff on the internet or whatever. But all of these stories, like, it's like this kind of one-off story. And then as you step back, you go, oh, well, that's really similar to this. And you start
yeah,
going, oh, these stories they have like like really, really strong comparisons,
yeah,
right? And actually these are all connected, and it could very well be the same entity, just in we don't
mm,
see the same thing the same way. We don't see our
yeah,
iPhone the same way. Even though you've got the same as me, you see it differently than what I see it. There's
yeah,
those
yeah, yeah.
small kind of perception differences. But when you're hearing these stories, it's quite easy sometimes to put them and go,
You put
you're
them together.
you're the
Yeah,
same.
yeah,
Yeah, you're the same
yeah, yeah,
entity. And they're
yeah,
just being called different things. And like that story that Melissa told you, a few weeks ago about her encounter with what she thought was a Yowie, an Australian
Yeah.
Bigfoot at the time, right? But actually turned out to probably be a dog man. And it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
because
yeah. The
she
more she went
developed.
into it, the more description she went into it, it was like, oh, this is actually, this is not a Yowie, this is a dogman. So, yeah, I mean, there's a definite difference between your Skinwalker and your Wendigo.
Absolutely.
There is a very clear difference between the two of them. Though I will admit that there was a Navajo story where they came across, this was outside of Skinwalker Ranch, I might add, is that a family had an encounter with a Skinwalker which had antlers on its head. So I found that really interesting. So whereas, your Wendigos are literally these emaciated people that have become cannibalistic. They're pale skin,
Mm,
they have, really long fingers, really emaciated, just like skin and bone, basically. And that's what they are, really hollowed out eyes. That is your Wendigo. That is totally different to what a
totally different.
Skinwalker is. So it's not an animal. It's basically this emaciated human kind of thing. Um,
Oh,
so I found that really interesting that they were talking about how this shape, the
interesting.
Skinwalker had the
Yeah.
antlers. So it's like, okay, and the other thing that we're talking about, Skinwalkers are Navajo. They're not any other
Sure.
like native law. They are a Navajo thing. So, but there are, we were talking about how there are skinwalkers that are seen around America. And we were like, okay, so is that maybe that's because where the Navajo were displaced and they've gone to these other places and then these, yeah, or
They've
has
taken
that
it.
kind of, yeah, has that been taken on by other tribes? We don't know. So, so that is something that
Right.
we don't know, and it's just yeah, really, really interesting. So that was kind of that was kind of like the main ones. And now I just want to go into this owl woman. So I'm going to put this story together, and I'm going to put it up onto YouTube because it's really, really interesting. I found it really fascinating for a couple of different reasons. So it is called the Tata Kel-A, which, if I've said that wrong, I apologize. This is where we're going to start doing shots. And she is, we've talked about
Totally.
doing shots. This probably, yeah. So we're talking about, it's called the Owl Woman Monster. Okay, so now this isn't Navajo. So this is the Yakama Indians.
Mm.
So I'm just going to read like this little bit of a story, and then I'm going to pick out like certain points. So Yakama Indian William Charlie told the story about the Takakal owl, the owl woman monster. Now this is in 1918. Now this is what really interested me. Before the tribes lived peacefully in this country, before the last creation, there were certain people who ate Indians whenever they could get them. So I was like, oh, okay. They preferred to hunt children as they were better eating. Again, they keep going for the kids. These people were these owl woman monsters. So they were women, were taller and larger than the common human. They ate everything bad known to what humans would not and what the Native Americans would not eat, like frogs, lizards, snakes, and anything else other Indians didn't eat, the Native Americans didn't eat, they would eat.
Mm.
They spoke the Indian language and in a way that could fool other Indians, to kind of entice them in. So this is where it gets really interesting. There were 5 of them, all of them sisters, but at the last creation, they came up only in California. They were seen in California, but only 2 of them were seen there. They were women, they were tall, and they lived in a cave. And they basically hunted children in California. So I just found that really fascinating because it just
Mm.
goes on to talk, like conversations that are going on about how there have been, number one, there have been resets throughout history, different creation periods. So it's like they're going on the last creation. So they're saying not the creations before, but it's just like the last creations and
Are
that
they
kind of stuff.
are they talking about the last ice age, 12,000 years ago?
That's it. Yeah, I don't know. So it's like, and then the fact that there were five sisters, they were obviously giants. They look like these owl women, but there are only two left. So it is said that they were, the two take were destroyed. So they don't know how, but they said possibly by a higher power. Their home became red hot and blew out. So basically exploded out. And the monster women were never seen again or never heard of. But they've always been spoken about as being the most dangerous people or creations on earth, which I found. So I'm just let my cat out. Come on.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
can we just follow on from that real quick?
Yeah.
So, they like to eat the Indian people, the native people.
The
This
children,
is
yeah, because they were the only ones that here. Yeah, oh, hang on, let me just finish this little bit, then you can carry on. So one of the five sisters drowned, and from her eyes, all the owls were created.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Okay. Wow.
yeah,
Interesting.
there you
Okay.
go.
So,
So much to pull out from that, eh? It's
oh
just
wow. So
like
there's so many connections. So you could go back to the creation period. Was that the ice age 12,000 years ago or 11,800 years ago? Was that the flood, which was about 5,500 years ago, depending on what biblical text
yeah,
you read? But if you read the Bible, you're talking 5,500 years ago, which essentially was there to kill all the Nephilim, the giants, right? So
yeah,
if we take that information of essentially giants living in California,
which
it gets
there are
better.
records of.
Yeah, Catalina Island, anyone? Anyway, so giants living in California, potentially making their homes in caves where there are massive fault lines, the San Andreas fault line. There was potentially, I mean, there's underwater volcanoes which
Yeah,
are exploding potentially sooner rather than later that we're talking about now. That's going to set off something like 10,000 earthquakes across the Americas, so be aware of that. But if you take that information, like just pluck it out, shove it down towards New Zealand, right, and around the South Pacific, which is what we
yeah,
kind of focus in on because this is our backyard and we know it, then we go like this. Okay, you now have giants, be it women or men, who are eating the native people.
generally the children always goes back to the
Oh,
children.
100%. Yeah, we like the children because they're far easier prey and a little bit juicier and not so rough and, a little bit tender.
All right, let
Um,
your reptilian side out there, leave something juicy.
um, we joke about how I'm a reptilian, but potentially a man. Um, but but in New Zealand, there are stories of giants who were chiefs, became chiefs of the Maori people or the Morioris that were
Yeah,
already here, and they ate the natives, right? They ate the
yeah,
natives, and so essentially they got killed. But one of the things they did was they lived in caves underneath the volcanoes, and
yeah.
when the volcanoes exploded, they died. The same sort of story
Story,
as
yeah,
you're dealing with up in California.
yeah.
That is so, so, so
So
interesting.
interesting, eh? And it's just, yeah, I mean, like you're saying, it's like they're talking about, the last creation. They're talking about, giants. They're talking about these five sisters, and like the whole sister thing is also in other
Mm-mm-mm.
kind of, cultures and that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah.
So
So that was kind of,
so
yeah, I just loved it.
I have a giant a giant guy, a giant guy. I have a giant in Navajo folklore. Do you want me to tell you about him?
Do it.
Like
Go.
leading
Yeah,
on
I've
from
got
what
some.
we're
I've got some first hand encounters here, but we'll
oh
go through.
cool.
Let's go
Like
back to like the
is that
twins,
Skinwalker encounters?
Skinwalkers. Yeah, but let's go back
Right.
to like the twins and the other
Okay.
stuff. Yeah,
Right. So real quickly, The Yitsu is a big monster. He was the greatest and most feared and the largest of the Anayi. And I'm going to tell you about the Anayi real quickly, yeah?
Mm.
Um, these guys, sorry, the giant met his end. Oh my God, seriously, English, I'm so excited. Okay, so the giant met his end at the hands of the hero twins, right? There we go, hero twins. And I'm going to go back into this and give you a bit of a quick little spiel. I
Yeah.
know that we don't have huge amounts of time. And I appreciate everyone sticking around for this because this is really cool. And basically, these twins destroyed all of the Anayi, right? But this guy, this giant guy, essentially, he was covered in valued rocks and minerals, right? So he's Navajo Nation folklore cryptid,
Yeah.
essentially. So he was covered in valuable rocks and minerals, in addition to the scaly flint armor, which I thought was quite interesting because that was the woman that you were talking about, the dagger woman.
Yeah, yeah,
Finger.
yeah, like the stone, yeah, spear finger, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, finger.
So
So she was,
stone kind of skin, you're like,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
Ah,
scaly flint armor, like stone knives. That's what he was covered in, coating his body. He had a perfect agate disc on his head, so agate, big blue
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
thing on his head, and a perfect turquoise around his neck, and a perfect
Mm.
white shell over his shoulder. His face was intimidatingly striped. He carried a basket that functioned as a quiver for lightning bolts, and a coyote was his messenger.
Mm.
So he is an Anayi, right? So an Anayi basically means alien gods.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so they're a group of ancient monsters who plagued the Navajo. And we're going back, way back to the creation stories as well, right?
Yeah.
So this I found incredibly interesting, and I thought it's kind of up our alley to have this conversation. So tune out now if you don't want to hear it, but you're gonna want to hear it. It's a good one. Okay, so the Anayi, or the alien gods, are a group of ancient monsters who plagued the Navajo. They were born as a result of a grand social experiment, the separation of the sexes, separation of men and women. Early on in the history of humanity, men and women quarreled often, which is what they basically do now. Maybe we need to do the social experiment again. They tried living apart for a while, but boredom and starvation eventually reunited them. It was not without repercussions, though. The women who had been separated from the men resorted to various implements to relieve their sexual frustrations.
Okay.
The Anayi were fathered by those unnatural acts, and their parentage was expressed in various ways. Let me read this to you. Jesus. Okay, so the Yitso, which is a giant, like the giant that I just
Yeah,
explained,
yeah.
he was fathered by a stone.
Hmm, interesting.
The horned Telgit was fathered by an antler.
Okay.
The Tizinhal inherited their avian nature from a pile of feathers. It gets better. And the limbless Binai Ahani comes from a sour cactus.
Hmm.
I don't think a cactus would be going anywhere near my anythings. And sure as hell not to parent a monster.
Oh my god.
Okay. Are you okay? Did you? Yep. All right.
Whew.
So,
Yep.
all right, let's talk about these. So, each of the Anayi, which are basically these ancient alien gods or these monsters that
Yeah.
these women bore, right? Were born and abandoned by their horrified mothers, but survived long enough to become a threat. They ravaged the land, killing and eating as they pleased. the Anayi reign of terror was brought to an end by hero twins. Right, and I'm going to
Mm.
absolutely butcher their names, but I'm going to give it a crack. Oh, yes. Number one was Nyanzagani.
Mhm.
Nyanzagani. And his brother. And his brother starts with a T, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
We'll
Okay?
call him T.
Yes. And we'll call them together Slayer of Alien Gods. That's what his name means. And his brother starts with a T, is Child of Water. So essentially, they were
Interesting.
the sons of the Sun Carrier, the Changing Woman, and the White Shell Woman, respectively. They all have Navajo names, but out of respect, I just don't want to go down that track and do it incorrectly. So, like, it's just too difficult, and I don't want to screw it up.
I know.
So the hero twins grew up rapidly and soon decided to find their father and their purpose. Along the way, they met Spider Woman, and I thought she was really cool because so many tales, especially down the South Pacific, we have these giant
Like spiders.
spider guardians. There's a spider god called the oh damn it, it's an A word, and he lives up in the
Yeah.
Solomon Islands, right? And he's part of the creation story. He is actually the creator god of everything, and he's a giant spider. So along the way, they met Spider Woman, who gifted them with a calming incantation and life feathers that would protect them in the direst of circumstances. From Spider Woman's house, they passed through a series of environmental hazards. So these included the rocks that crush, these all have Native American names or Navajo names. The rocks that crush, which is a narrow chasm that would clap shut and kill travelers. So the hero twins had to go through all of these. The cutting reeds with knife-like leaves. Needle cactus, a field of cacti with vicious spines. Sounds like back door.
Yeah, so the brambles out the back.
Yeah,
And a horse
literally.
taking me through the middle of it.
Well, my husband thought it would be really awesome to put the biggest cactus next to the back door. And so when you're walking in a little bit drunk and you're like, oh, I'll just, it's not much fun. Anyway, we moved that real fast.
Drunken cactus spikes. Yeah, we've all
Oh,
had them.
we've got the seething sands, mountainous dunes that engulfed climbers, the spreading stream that would widen itself and drown swimmers. And basically, they went through all of these. The hero twins went through all
Mm.
of these, outwitted them, and subdued everything. When they reached their father's house, they came face to face with two bear guardians, but Spider Woman's sacred words calmed them down. They also went through the guardians of lightning. They went through like wolf guardians, snake guardians, all of this sort of stuff. But the Spider
Mm.
Woman protected them, and the incantation that she gave protected them,
Yeah.
and got them to a point where they were able to await their father. Um, so his dad was very, very grumpy because he was like, what the hell's going on here? He said, who are these two that have entered today? He bellowed. But his wife responded craftily, who are you to speak? Two youths came here looking for their father. So she was obviously quite pissed off at him and was like, you've born these two children, these two twins.
And I brought them up all
Talk to
alone.
them. Talk to them, you bugger.
Yeah.
God, we need that woman to go and talk to a few of the fathers that we know. Anyway, um, um, she says, sorry, who are you to speak? Two youths came here looking for their father. If you see nobody but me, whose sons are these? In a rage, their father grabbed the robes that the boys were surrounded and shook them out and basically threw the robes to the corners, the four corners of the Navajo Nation, right, which is the four corners.
Yeah.
Um, Basically, the boys survived unharmed because of the Spider Woman's protection. And so the father kind of calmed down and went, wow, okay, I wish those were indeed my children, he says, and then basically recognized them as his sons and then aided in their quest to rid the world of the Anayi, which are those giant monsters that were created. So basically, they went through. They destroyed everything. They went through and killed the majority of the Anayi, but some were left alive. And
Mm.
basically because they weren't as bad as the other ones, or they were just living their lives, or doing whatever they needed to do.
Just, I
um
promise I will not eat any more people.
100%. Yeah, I'll be good. I'll live in a cave. I'm sorry. And so, yeah, the hero twins, right? And so they went through and rid the world of these terrible abominations that
Yeah.
became monsters that annoyed and terrified the Navajo nation. And to a point, you kind of go, okay, so were the ones that they left alive, did they evolve, get a little
Yeah.
bit more negative energy and turn into something that they shouldn't be?
Kelsey, they're friends, not food. Yeah, pretty much.
um, and I've got one that I want to tell you about, and
Mm.
then you can tell us your stories about the Skinwalker, because I can't wait
Oh,
about.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
can't
yeah,
wait for
yeah.
that. That's real cool. So
Yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah.
got one Anayi that I really want to tell you about because he's
It's
freaking.
kind of interesting. You're talking about Nai. Is that kind of the native word for the Anunnaki? Because they were like bird-like creatures. They were like these other same things. They were these giants that came in, and they were like shape-shifting and or hybrids or whatever you want to call them. And it's like how they're all kind of connected. You look at the owl woman from the feathers. You got the cactus cat. Which is
Oh,
whether
sure.
it's real or not.
Okay.
But there's folklore about these things, so they all have that connection of what they look like. These stories later on. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I found it really interesting as
Mm.
well, because I was like that, all of the ancient cultures have their stories of
Yeah,
how these
creation stories. Yeah.
creatures became, and a lot of them come from sacrifice or scarcity or whatever, but
Yeah.
there's always this situation where they were born from something, or they came down from
Came
somewhere,
from the
or they
sky
lived.
people. They came from here. Then they came with
Sure.
humans, and then they've got the like these giants. And it's yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So the
yeah.
Anayi, alien gods, right? Remember, that's what they mean. So the one that I want to share with you, and I'm going to turn this into a social media post so that everyone can see the picture of this guy, because he is fantastic. I'm going to say his name wrong, but I will spell it for you as well, okay? So this guy is the Testahotsilatali.
Sounds like a hot tilly sally guy.
Testahotsilatali. Anyway, Testahotsilatali. Very long Navajo name. However, what does his name mean? He is AKA he who kicks people down the cliff.
I love it. See ya.
What a little bugger. He literally did. So I'm not going to read you the whole story, but just a little bit about him, okay? Because he's friggin' hilarious. I love him. So he who kicks people down the cliff, or the kicking monster, was among the many Anayi, or alien gods, slain by Nayantagazi, which is one of the hero twins, right? He was the guy that
Yeah,
went out, basically slaughtered everything.
good for
Um,
him.
yeah, this guy got him as well, yeah. So, as with the rest of his brood, he was born from a human woman who, with the absence of men, had resorted to other means of stimulation.
This is going to be for our R18. We're going to do this one. We're going to go into this a little bit further. So if you would like to join us for our R18 dungeon talk, we will be talking about these further.
Oh my God, these won't be blimmin' reels that we put out, will they? Sorry. Um, anyway, okay, so um, uh, he was basically born at a certain place on the Navajo Nation, that was basically like a wall-like cliff, right? He was born on a wall, essentially, or on a cliff. He had no head, with only a long pointed end where the head should be. His mother, disgusted at the monster she had born, put him into a hole in the cliff and sealed it with a stone. And basically, he survived anyway. As he grew, his hair grew into the rock, anchoring him fast. He sat in place next to the well beaten trail, his legs folded up, and anyone who passed he would immediately kick and sent them tumbling down the cliff. But the best part of this is he sent them down to his children who sat at the bottom of the cliff, and basically they ripped them to pieces and ate them. Yum, 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 yum. Blood
Oh,
everywhere.
I mean, he was being a good dad and he was providing for his children. That's how we look at
100%,
that.
100%. Look,
Oh my
and
God.
one of the great things was there was 3 types of fruiting cactus growing nearby, so a steady stream of victims was guaranteed. His spy was the turkey vulture. So basically, he would fly over and be like, "Caw, there's a guy coming," and he'd be like, "I'm waiting, I'm ready." And then as
I
the
wonder
poor
if that's what
bugger would,
happened to that billionaire without being too controversial, who just fell off a cliff, you know?
cooking monster.
It was the rock monster.
Anyway, there's a whole heap of story around that guy. He's real freaky and he's so, so, so cool. He ends up
He's
getting
pretty
chopped up.
cool. He's pretty cool. I
Gets, he
mean,
gets
we've got to
chopped up.
laugh, you know, we've got to laugh, otherwise we just
Yeah,
cry.
100%. And his fate was that he gets chopped off from the wall. He gets thrown, in fact, kicked down into the gully, and he gets eaten by his
By his own
children.
children. Yeah. Okay.
You know.
Oh, you know, these things happen.
Okay, so oh, tell us
Yeah,
your
yeah, Dennis Kelsey is a
skinwalker.
typical mischievous dude. I think he's kind of, yeah,
Yeah,
but you know,
100%. Hey, Juliet,
yeah.
tell us your skinwalker stories.
Okay, so
I want
I've
to
got a couple
hear
of like
skinwalker
a
stories.
couple of short ones.
Take
So
your
this is
time.
off of a Navajo, again off a Navajo site where they come in and they tell their stories. So this one is a rural encounter at dusk, in a small rural town in New Mexico. A local resident named Maria shared her chilling encounter with a skinwalker. One evening, as she was returning home from a friend's house, she noted the sun setting down behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the dirt road. She says the air was still and it was very unsettling. There was an unsettling silence, basically just came over the whole landscape. You know, she's walked this trail many, many times, this road. As she walked, she suddenly found an overwhelming sense of being watched. Glancing around, she spotted a figure crouched near a bush, its eyes reflecting in the fading light. It appeared to be a coyote, but something about its demeanor like sounded off. The creature was just staring directly at her, its gaze piercing and unnatural. Feeling a rush of fear, she quickened her pace, but the coyote began following her, moving silently and swiftly. As she reached her driveway, she turned around to see the creature stand upright onto 2 feet, shape shifting into a tall, thin man. So terrified, she rushed inside, locking the door behind her. You know, to this day, she says she's basically just absolutely terrified and doesn't go walking alone at night and stuff like that. So,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
that's
So just,
scary.
yeah,
That's really,
it's,
really
yeah,
scary because your brain goes, it's a coyote, okay,
yeah.
that's the
Might be a
danger.
bit rabid. I'm just going to get out of here.
Sure, that's
Yeah.
the danger, right? And then all of a sudden it adjusts and changes into a standing
Changes,
upright
stands up.
man.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that's
So,
scary.
yeah, so another one was a family camping trip. So this is another first-hand account. So these are all first-hand. These aren't stories that have been told. These are first-hand ones. So they went camping in the Navajo Nation, one of the state parks there during the summer. Initially excited about the trip, they set up their camp near a serene lake surrounded by towering pines. At night, the atmosphere shifted. Strange noises echoed. Now, these are people that have been out camping their entire life, mum and dad. Strange noises started echoing through the woods, and the feeling of really unease settled over the group. Initially, kind of dismissing it, they tried to kind of be like, no, it's just other animals that we don't really know, blah, blah, blah. And they tried to continue to enjoy their evening. In the end, the unease grew when they began to hear what sounded like a child laughing in the bush, despite the fact that they were alone in the woods. And this basically, they went and hid in their tents, and this laughter echoed around the trees basically most of the night around them. So it was like trying to draw them out and stuff. Yeah. So it was, Yeah, it's just there's like heaps of different ones. Another one, a resident reported a chilling encounter with a skinwalker. The creature initially appearing again as a coyote. A coyote seems to be like the most kind of common one. Displayed really unnatural behavior and was following them. As the encounter progressed, the creature's true form was revealed, causing the witness to flee in terror, basically leaving again a lasting and kind of impression, basically terrifying this person, and it changed. So yeah, but I mean, like there are so many stories out there. Go on to, I've put Shanklin's name into their comments and stuff. Go and check him out onto YouTube. You can listen to his encounters and other encounters of skinwalkers. He really goes into the lore, from the Navajo perspective. His encounters are absolutely terrifying. Yeah, and like you says, it's changed him as a person,
Yeah.
basically, and the understanding and stuff. It's like a lot of mythology, we see them, coming from a white person's perspective. People are like, oh, it's just a myth, it's not this, but they are very real. These creatures are very real. We know from our own encounters with entities and dark entities, we know these things are real, we know they're
Sure.
here. So they it's not just a pretend thing within the Navajo. They are real. They're these physical kind of spiritual kind of, yeah, creatures, and yeah, they're very dangerous, very, very dangerous.
And the amount of
Yeah,
stories that like you can find first hand, eyewitness accounts, first hand accounts so
yeah,
easily because there's so
yeah,
many, they're so prevalent, right?
yeah, yeah,
All around
yeah,
us. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
found a couple as well about kind of uh women that and I know that skinwalkers tend to be men, and this was like there was a
yeah,
story that I found of a woman skinwalker,
yes,
which is very rare. You don't often
very
find
rare.
that
Yeah,
that are seen as skinwalkers, but essentially these kids were out mucking around and playing and stuff, and they saw this woman who they knew was deemed a skinwalker or a witch doctor or whatever. She was known by the community, and she was standing up on this huge ridge line looking out over the township and that sort of stuff, and these kids, and it's a first hand account of one of these boys who was kind of 15 at the time or whatever, standing there watching this woman up there, and they knew it was her, and she all of a sudden stepped off the cliff and floated down off the mesa
ooh,
down to the ground. And
wow.
they were like, oh,
We're out of
ran
here.
as fast as they could, went all the way
Yeah,
home. Their mum brought them inside, brought over one of the like tribal leaders, and did a protection spell and
yeah,
that sort of stuff. Because I guess that's
yeah,
the other part of skinwalkers is once
yeah,
they show themselves to you, there's a connection there, and it's hard to break that connection, and they tend to
yeah.
haunt you essentially, right? Or haunt the
like
family.
like a negative entity, it's the same thing. They
Sure.
have the same thing, the negative entity. You've got to bring in, you've got to try and cleanse yourself, you've got to try and get rid of whatever that connection is, or wrongdoing,
Yes.
or whatever they feel. But and kind of what I've got from the skinwalkers, from my understanding, is that they will um they'll go to someone, they'll attract some, go to somebody that kind of attracts them, but there's not always a real reason for that. You know what I mean? These people haven't done anything negative, they haven't done anything bad. It's just like, yeah, you're on my radar, basically. And
And maybe
yeah.
it's a case of, Skinwalker Ranch, for example, being on the path of the Skinwalker. That's obviously like an energetical
Oh my
pathway or
God, yeah.
whatever.
It's
So
that whole
potentially,
area, isn't it? There's
sure.
just, it's there's a series that, people, probably Americans, you've probably seen it. It's called Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. Like, I can only get very few bits and
Yeah.
pieces of it off of YouTube, but we can't actually get the series here. And from what I've kind of seen on there, that's it's insane. It's yeah, and it's basically, it's not Skinwalker Ranch, it's what's happening around those
Everything else.
areas, and other areas, and not just skinwalkers, but UFO, paranormal, and yeah. So it's
Yeah,
been,
for
yeah,
sure.
it's been really interesting. But I hope you guys really like the socials coming out. There's some really cool stuff, some really mean stuff coming out. Yeah.
Mean
It's
stuff.
creepy stuff. Well, creepy stuff. It's just like, yeah, these stories. But yeah, definitely, yeah, Wendigo next week again is just gonna be
Yeah,
awesome. And
super
then we're
looking
kind of
forward to
going
it.
a little bit off the thing and going into modern day vampires. So that
Ooh.
should be fun.
And
So
just remember, we are heading over to YouTube. So if you want to keep up to date with our topics, our live topics, they'll be at the same time, same day, all of that sort of stuff, but over at YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed
yeah,
yet, please go over there, jump on that.
yeah.
We'll be putting socials out to remind everyone, but that will happen in the next
Yeah,
couple of
probably
weeks.
July. I think probably July. We'll probably do it the first week of July.
Yeah.
We'll aim for, and if we get our butts together, not
Yeah.
literally.
Well, if Juliet would actually read her calendar just in the background there, that could help.
That's because I'm doing all her social media stuff. Ha!
True. Juliet is absolutely killing it right now. She is absolutely smashing
Oh,
the living hell out of this space, and we love her for it. And thank you, and
yeah.
all of the above. Hey, we got to get out of here. We have got a founding members catch up over on the website. If you're not a founding member yet, you don't have a membership, please pop on over to cryptidwomensociety.com. You can get your membership there, and you can come and join us for our catch up chat with all of the amazing women that are a part of it.
I go. And Kelsey goes, I guess I know when to stay and when do go.
Oh my
You're
God.
awesome. So funny. Thanks,
Love ya.
Kelsey. See you
Thanks
guys.
everyone for joining us. We're
Bye.
dead. See you next time. Eggs. Oh my God. Seriously. The sense of humor in this place is amazing. See you all later. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye.